BBQ Central.
Start the game! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike the match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
Good evening and welcome to the Really Big Barbecue Central Show. This is the show that talks about all things that are important to the world of barbecue and grilling. The show, of course, originating from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. I'm your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evening's live fire, fun, and frivolity show. If you want to jump in on the show this evening or you don't know how to follow the show, here's all that information.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to Greg at bbqcentralshow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in case you didn't get the newsletter, which I think you can find on the new website. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to go back and check it out. But I think what I ended up doing was, maybe it is still there in the pet. Go over to the new website. If you haven't seen it yet, let me pull it up here for you so you can take a look at the great work that these crack staffs at No Names Please. Here you go. This is it. Bang. So is there? Yeah, right there. You can go right here where it says show newsletter, and you can put in your name and email address. And then you can also scroll down and see all the latest shows. And we're still evidently working on the sponsors portion. And then right there, you can also subscribe to the podcast top and bottom of the new website. So, hey, a lot cleaner and a lot more modern. However, I'm not going to mention who did it because I still feel like I'm being held captive to a certain degree. And I can't get any customer service from these people.
Get that big stuff out of here.
And to answer Jason King's email or question, which looks a little something like this, you paid for that? I mean, yeah, it's better than anything that I'm going to do, of course. But remember, you get what you pay for. So if that's lackluster to you, don't worry. I didn't break the bank on this. But you also have to remember what the old one looked like. So what you see now, while it might be laughable, Jason, a light year ahead of what it was for the last 10, 11, 12 years or whatever. So, look, we take what we can get. I'm not a webmaster. I don't really even need a website. I just would like somewhere for somebody to go if they run across it on the World Wide Webs and subscribe to the podcast. I just need somewhere to keep the feed. That's the only thing that I even care about is the feed. I lose the feed and we are fucked.
Get that big stuff out of here.
Or I'd have to retreat and only do the show on YouTube or something like that. I don't want to do that because they hate me and I hate them. However, the feed is where it's at. So the feed lives in the new website. The feed lived in the old website. The feed will live somehow in the new website that I'm currently in the process of getting built to usurp the new website that I just had built. And here we go. What can I tell you? Anyway, here's what's coming up on the show this evening. But first, let me tell you that you can... Wait. Did I just blow over the top of the open altogether because Jason sidetracked me? The guy stays away for months on end, then he comes back in, and all of a sudden I'm off track. I'm sorry. Coming up in about 10 minutes from now, a couple months ago, Meathead, I think it was January, brought up just as a side conversation about Koji, and that really sparked the interest of many of the listeners, many of the people that follow me on social media wanting to know more and more about Koji, how to use it. Meathead said he's got a portion of his new book dedicated to Koji and the use of it. Well, it just so happens that the city behind me also happens to house the Koji authority in the world. And joining me, also co-owner of Larder Delicatessen on West 29th Street, Jeremy Umansky, will join me not one, but two segments. So let's say the balance of the first hour, where we will talk about Koji from a high level, and then we will start to dig into actually how to use it and things you can do with it. And then we'll keep it live fire integrated. We'll talk about using Koji on the 4 big barbecue meats, that being chicken, ribs, pork shoulder, and brisket. We'll also talk about using Koji on steak. And then, as time would allow, we'll talk about getting outside the box. What else could you use Koji on? So if you were wanting more information on this whole Koji fascination, then this is the two segments that you'll want to keep locked and loaded, because Jeremy is going to spread a incredible amount of knowledge and insight on Koji. He has co-written a book about a year and a half ago called Koji Alchemy, which was up for a James Beard Award nomination for Best Book of the Year. So he knows all about it. He is the leading expert on Koji. He is continually consulted, does talks, the whole deal. And Jeremy has the first hour. Then we'll move to the second hour. It is the third Tuesday of the month, and that brings new 2023 monthly guest Wes Wright from cookoutnews.com. Lots of news continuing to break here over the last month, so we'll talk to Wes about all the cool stuff that's happening, new stuff that's being released into the market, new patents, new copyrights, and all the good stuff. And then closing out the show, because it is the end of the first quarter, Texas Monthly's barbecue editor Daniel Vaughn will be joining us. We'll be talking in depth about Truth Barbecue, because a couple weeks ago I was in Houston, and I didn't realize as I was waiting in line to Truth Barbecue that was number 3 on the top 50 list, on the most recent top 50 list from Texas Barbecue. So we'll talk to Daniel about Texas Barbecue now that I've had my first real bites of a top 50 list. So only 2 better, according to Texas Monthly. Very excited to talk to him about that. And then we have some other things to talk about, not the least of which is getting a history lesson on how come most barbecue places, especially those that are Central Texas themed, spread across throughout the land, even here in Cleveland, Ohio, are giving you garnishes of onion, pickle, and white bread. Why is that? Where did it come from? When did it start? And why is everybody doing it now? So Daniel will give us the look back on that as well, and some other topics to squeeze in there as time allows. So that's how your show is shaking out here this evening. Don't forget, you can follow me socially, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. And we say good evening to everybody watching through Facebook and Twitch /BBQ Central Show. Also watching on YouTube /RD Rempe, and audibly on Clubhouse as well. YouTube poll of the week. And you can weigh in right here. Which fuel do you prefer to cook with? Gas, charcoal, or wood? And currently, 55% of you are saying charcoal. Coming in a close second at 45% wood. And 0% of you are saying gas. 0.
Get that free stuff out of here.
Not a 1? Come on. There's got to be some gasser out there that just loves the convenience of gas, and you are forsaking all other of the cooking fuels. So we will continually update that as I try to remember. We'll be asking the guests as well. And here you go. So let's start here tonight. I want to say this. The numbers are in after a week out of Kent Rollins' last appearance. He showed up in the first interview. Was that the first interview segment? Oh, dear. Kent was at 1014 last week, and the numbers are in. Kent Rollins, top 3 most downloaded / watched event in show history. That's going back a number of years. We've had a lot of great guests. We've had a lot of big download numbers. But Kent is now number 3 And that single appearance, although it was his second appearance in total, but his last appearance easily outranking the first one. A lot of people jumped in on the live, and even more people jumped in on the download because it's more easy to watch at your convenience, which I certainly understand. So Kent is now in the top 3 most downloaded shows and most watched shows as it happened live in the show's history, which we all know I am now in the 15th year of doing live shows. And at the top of the second hour, we'll talk about a little bit more of the show history, which you might not be aware of, that's coming down the pike sooner than later. And then, of course, we have some quick feedback from past shows. Daryl in Oregon writing in, Greg, longtime podcast listener, love the show. I have really grown to love your segments with Sam the cooking guy. You two are really having at it this last time around. I enjoy the difference of opinion that is apparent between you, and I love that neither of you hold back. Thanks for a great show all these years. Regards, Daryl. Daryl, thank you for writing it. Before we get to Jeremy Umansky, I will talk to you about Pits and Spits, some of the best looking, best cooking smokers and grills on the market today. Pits and Spits offering a full family of products, including traditional offset smokers, wood pellet grills, charcoal grills, travel grills, combination pits, fire pits, and much more. Pits and Spits has been one of the only American fabrication shops that's focused on smokers and grills for almost 40 years. Why is that important? They're able to put an emphasis on quality and design, locally sourced materials, and unmatched attention to detail. From the fully welded barrels to the heavy gauge steel, they bring both function and beauty to life. Pits and Spits builds every product with the intention it's going to get passed down for generations to come. So it doesn't matter if you're in the competition scene or if you're just looking to take the backyard grilling game to the next level. There's a product for you in their portfolio. Check out this custom website, pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central, all spelled out. That's pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. And use promo code BBQ Central for a free spice pack with your order of $500 or more. So if you're ordering a new grill, you're easily crossing that $500 threshold. You're going to get the free spice pack as long as you use promo code BBQ Central at checkout. pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. That's pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. We are back to talk Koji with the Koji Master from right here in Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio. Jeremy Umansky, stick around. I'll be right back.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Broadcasting live from the BBQ Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
Welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by cookinpellets.com, your number one source for quality wood pellets for all your pellet-driven cookers. Visit Cookin Pellets, COOKIN, cookinpellets.com for more information or to purchase. You can also visit Amazon.com to purchase as well. However, they recommend go to the website first and then further look down the line. That's the great folks over at cookinpellets.com. My guest in the first hour this evening, a man of many talents and expertise. What expertise, you ask? How about one of the leading mushroom foragers in all the land? How about a 4-time James Beard Award nominee? How about a co-owner of one of the best deli/restaurants in all of Bomb City, USA? And if that's not enough, the leading Koji expert here in the United States, and someone who I am honored to call both a friend and someone who inspired me to go out of my comfort zone when it comes to trying things to eat, which happened as recently as this past Thursday when he gave me a sample of lamb heart and testicle spread. Who's going to get me to do that? I'm going to tell you who right now. It's Jeremy Umansky. Hey, Jeremy, how are you, pal?
Hey, Greg, how you doing?
You did it. You got me to eat heart and testicle all off the same spoon, and while my insides were like doing a cringe, I said, you know what? This guy has never steered me wrong when it's come to food. You've got me to eat the most bizarre things that I would probably never think about to eating. But I think it's the way you bring it across and your intentional use of literally everything that's coming off an animal. Is that something you learned growing up, is to make sure you're using everything?
I wouldn't say it was so much a focus of, my parents cooking or my family's cooking growing up. But my grandmother was a kosher caterer here. She was born in 1920. She definitely came up during the Depression. So those sensibilities were highly ingrained in her and my parents, and definitely grew up in the type of culture where you gotta clean your plate.
Hmm.
Because if you don't do that, you're not getting all your nutrients. You're also disrespecting whoever cooked for you. So it was more that focus compared to making sure nothing's wasted. That came much, much later.
Jeremy Umansky joining us here on the show. So we have a lot of Koji talk to get here during our time together this evening, and I appreciate you giving me some extended time here in the first hour. But if you don't mind,
Greg, anything for you.
Oh, well, I certainly appreciate that. So it was October of 2018. That was the last time you were on the show. So shame on me for having that much time escape to having you back here in the confines. However, can you give us a quick, high-level background on you and how the passion for food grabbed you originally?
Yeah, I was really fortunate. As I said, my grandmother was a kosher caterer. So from a very young age, food and feeding people, serving people, that was just how my family showed love. That's how we took care of each other. It's how some of my family members made money. So right from an early age, that was kind of the exemplar of like, well, this is how you take care of yourself and others. And really fell into that. I mean, to that point, I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and 3 of us all work in food service. Um, and although I have a lot of cousins that are no longer in food service, at one point or another, a lot of them did also work in there. So it's kind of filtered in, down throughout the family. But over time, I went on. I decided I was going to be a chef. I went to culinary school, and I fell down this crazy rabbit hole in culinary school. I was farming. I met a farmer. I was running their farm, a 40-acre vegetable farm. We were raising animals and vegetables. I met a fermentation guru who showed me how to make everything from sauerkraut to charcuterie. I apprenticed underneath a French chef from Lyon at that point and learned a lot more about charcuterie and kind of the cooked things, so more in the barbecue realm, right? Let's cure a pig's leg and then slowly smoke it for a few days. So picked up those things and eventually found my way back to Cleveland after kind of zigzagging around. And I had built up this skill set where I was a chef who could forage and ferment and farm, and really, really decided that I was going to be the type of culinarian that made things that the chefs would cook with. And that's how I kind of ended up to where I am now.
I maintain that Cleveland is the best food scene going between Chicago and New York City. Agree or disagree?
Oh, agree, hands down.
Mhm.
I mean, as far as kind of like a mid-tier, middle market city goes, so you have 3 things you have to look at. Cleveland is the poorest big city in the nation. And to pull off the culinary scene that we have, being the poorest big city in the nation, shows off a lot of ingenuity, a lot of gusto, a lot of this isn't the Rust Belt, right? We're polishing up that rust. We're making it shiny again. We're embracing new green technologies. We're embracing the Great Lakes as this awesome resource for activities, for food inspiration, all sorts of things. So it's really fantastic that we have it. And I'm just blown away, and it's not just Cleveland, Greg. I mean, you've traveled a bit around the country. You talk with chefs all over the place. Like, you can find a world-class meal in Norman, Oklahoma. You can find one in the middle of the desert somewhere in New Mexico, in Arkansas, in places you would thought you'd never be able to find world-class food. This kind of boomerang effect, this thing I did. I went away from Cleveland, spent a lot of time in New York and other places and came back. People all over the country are doing that with their hometowns, and you just find amazing food anywhere. And Cleveland is I don't want to say as good as it gets, because I think it can get even better than it already is. So
Present company excluded. Who's the best chef from Cleveland?
You know, there's so many chefs doing so many different things. And as chefs, we kind of specialize in various areas. So there's certain food that I just don't connect with. I don't understand. I maybe don't necessarily enjoy eating. Those aren't foods that I would want to cook and serve to someone because I couldn't put that type of connective emotion into serving you those particular dishes, you know? So I don't think we necessarily look at like who's the best chef, but who's doing what they're doing the best of their ability, and it's just awesome. I love places like Cordelia on East 4th Street that just opened. Absolutely incredible. Lovers of smoke and salt will definitely enjoy that menu there. They're absolutely fantastic. But you have great chefs too, like Liu Fang, who is a chef from Shandong in China, who's been doing pop-ups at Larder and just announced we'll have her own spot on the east side for full service starting in 2 weeks. You know, I don't think anybody's cooking contemporary Chinese food anywhere between Chicago and New York as good as she's doing. You know, on the flip side, she's not a burger cook. So I love Bon Rossavong is going to be up in Collinwood, and he's going to be opening Doink's Burgers really soon. Like, he's one of the best burger cooks in the city. So I think everybody in Cleveland, all these chefs have found their niche, and they're doing such amazing jobs of what they're really passionate about and lovely about. And that's why you can find so much good food in so many different places. And it's not necessarily about the one chef or these few chefs. It's about how all these chefs are synergizing together. People are hanging out, they're eating each other's food, they're promoting each other. And that's how you really know you've got a synergistic, holistic food scene that's organic and people really love and enjoy because it's truly delicious.
Jeremy Umansky joining us here on the show, one of the co-owners at Larder Delicatessen, the website larderdb.com. So I did a segment with Meathead beginning of the year. I think it was the January segment because he comes on once a month. And he's in the process of writing a new book. He was originally trying to pitch it as like a 2-book set, but I believe at last conversation with Meathead, the editor said, look, it's just going to be one book and let's focus on that. So that's what he's doing. This new book includes a portion about Koji. We talked about it briefly, but I got a huge amount of reaction from the Centralites yearning for more, wanting more insight and more education on this. And I'm like, man, who's a better person to get than the guy I know to be the Koji master, the guy who co-wrote a book called Koji Alchemy, which was up for Book of the Year from James Beard Award. So when did Koji first get on your radar, Jeremy, and what drew your curiosity?
Well, I got to put this out there because I owe Meathead an email. So I'm glad we're bringing him up right now because I totally got to get back to him. You know, Koji is infinitely fascinating. All right. So just to kind of catch anybody up who's listening that maybe hasn't heard about this. So this is a mold, just like the mold that maybe grows in your shower or your leftovers you forgot about. But this mold specifically is good for us and does really cool things to our food. And the things that it does is it takes the core building blocks that make up all our food, our proteins, our sugars, our fats, and it can break them apart into the individual things that make them up. And in the case of something like proteins, let's say you got a nice big hunk of meat you want to throw on the grill. Well, the Koji will do its magic via enzymes, these specialized types of proteins it itself produces. It's actually its digestive juices. And it rubs it all over the meat. And as this thing does its dance and does its party all over there, it breaks the proteins up into the umami amino acids that it's made of. So we can literally synthesize MSG and these associated umami flavors out of a steak without actually adding MSG to it.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy, right? Like you can literally make a steak, any cut of protein you want to examine, the best tasting version of itself, because literally on a microscopic level, you're unlocking taste and flavor molecules that would normally not be present till after your stomach acid started to break something down. And we can create that in a controlled way ahead of time that's actually delicious for us and has over time a lot of nutritional benefits. We've been using this mold to make things like sake and miso and soy sauce for the better part of 10,000 years. So we know what we're doing with it at this point, no matter what culture who's using it. Everybody's got different names for it and how they apply it. But in recent years, we've really kind of doubled down on taking it out of maybe some of its more traditional settings that are found throughout Asia and kind of porting them into, well, how do I cook my pastrami in Cleveland, Ohio? You know, Koji has a home in there, and it can allow me to make a pastrami, incredibly fast because of this enzymatic action, and incredibly tasty with almost no more work than I would normally be doing. It's incredibly beneficial, and it just doesn't stop there. You know, we're not just talking about umami flavors. We're creating very, very interesting arrays of simple sugars from starch breakdown, and there's starches and sugars in your steak also. You know, individual muscle cells are made up with all these little constituent parts, and Koji's enzyme, everything's so small it can actually work as individual muscle cells and create flavor. So you get free sugars, and then through the breakdown of fats, Koji creates esters and fatty acids. And when you smell something delicious that's cooking, that breakdown also happens. So Koji can keep that on the meat and keep it ingrained in the piece of food that you're cooking with. So the aromatic molecules are going to be that much more enticing, that much more inducing of salvation and that sort of thing. Like you smell that steak and your mouth is dripping and you're like, oh, I can't wait for those juices to drip down my chin, you know? Your mouth has already started the process. So Koji can actually do this to like the 10th degree for anything. And it's seemingly magical how it does it, because we just take Koji itself, like grown on rice or barley, or a liquid expression of it, or we take miso or sake or soy sauce and we add it to something, and already we notice like this incredible benefit to our foods. So using it all the time is just, I hear from some people like, oh, this is too good to be true. Or, you know, the flip side of that is you use it in everything. And it's not too good to be true. We've proven that over 10,000 years. And yes, you can put it on everything and it'll make nearly anything better.
Is Koji one thing, or are there multiple strains or versions of Koji?
I kind of liken Koji, and we kind of got to keep in mind this is the Japanese name for this mold, specifically when it's grown on rice or barley. Okay? They have other names for it when it's grown on beans and other substrates. And the substrate is what the mold actually is growing on. So, from that standpoint, we kind of push it out, we break it apart, and we see that no matter like what the Koji touches or what its intent is, how its enzymatic action works, it's always beneficial for the creation of flavor, the changing of texture, and literally like making a food just that much better. And it's a simple plug and play, Greg. I mean, literally, like, have you ever used soy sauce in a marinade before you put something on the grill?
Absolutely.
And it noticeably, if you put that same cut of meat on the grill without that marinade, like there's a big flavor difference. Now, the cool thing about Koji is when we take it and we've had it that's kind of grown on rice or barley or whatever, we make this liquid extract of it. We don't necessarily have to process the Koji further into something else like a miso or a soy sauce. And right away, instead of the Koji's enzymes acting on like a bean or something else first, it's right away hitting the meat first. So there's ways that we can work with it that are really simple, and ways to source it that are really simple too. You know, you don't have to get into the romance of growing this and thinking you're going to brew the most perfect sake ever invented and that sort of thing and pair it with your great steak. Like, sure, you could have that as a goal and you could obtain that, but there's so many things about it that can be intimidating for some people, right? It comes from Asia. It's using a different style of food. Hey, I don't use miso in barbecue. Does it even belong in barbecue? Does sake belong in barbecue? You know, any of those questions. And the answer to all that is yes. And Koji also has a place, and it's very easy to use and it's very easy to plug into.
So how does somebody start the Koji journey? They're listening here this evening. They're going to get out on podcasts. They're buying into everything that you're saying, and now they want to try. So how do I start from scratch? Because we've hit on it. You've hit on it a couple different times about growing it on beans or rice. But like, I'm dumb, so I don't even know what that means. It sounds like there's a step that has to happen before that, before it actually starts growing. So how do we begin the journey now that we all buy in?
So, to really begin the journey, you actually have to source the spores. And these are like the seed of a plant. They're super, super tiny. They sell in like packets that are measured by the gram. Okay. And a 40-gram packet of spores, we're talking a little bit over an ounce. An ounce is like 28, almost 29 grams. So 40 ounces of spores is enough to grow 400 pounds of this mold on rice or barley.
Wow.
That in effect is that's a lot of Koji.
How long is that going to last you? Like forever?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I use it in massive amounts in my restaurant. Like we make rye bread with it, we make pastrami with it. It's in everything. The fried chicken, say you name it. There's Koji touched into it, and I would say like just the molded rice or barley that's freshly grown. We go through maybe 20 pounds of that a week, and we use a lot. So when you get this little 40-gram packet, it costs you $20-$30 depending on shipping, that sort of thing. You can literally grow like all the Koji you ever need.
Yeah.
For any use you'd have at home or for a lot of restaurants in that case. So it kind of starts there, but that can be a huge barrier to entry for people, especially you're like, listen, I just want to get some of this stuff rubbed on my meat before I get on the grill. There's so many outlets. And I think the two outside of the obvious, like rubbing your meat with miso or having soy sauce in your marinade, which are direct ways you can use Koji and get the benefits of its umami flavor and all these other things that it does. The other way is to look online and source something called Shio Koji, Shio. It translates to as salted Koji. It's going to be like a liquid, kind of looking like a porridge, like mushy oatmeal. And it is salt and the Koji grown rice mixed together, and it's just this tasty, amazing, salty marinade. Whether you want to saute some broccoli with it or, put it on something before you put it on the grill or cure something all the way through with it and then smoke it. Like there's so many options. And the other one is one that doesn't have salt in it. Very similar. It's a liquid. It's called Amazake, and that's Amazake. So the Amazake is going to be kind of similar to the Shio, but it's typically not as fermented. It's a little sweeter, much sweeter, and it doesn't have the salt in it. And that's my go-to at our restaurant. And you can find little Tetra packs of these like on Amazon, in Asian grocers. The Chinese have their own version. The Koreans do. So you can find them under different names in various markets, but they all kind of look like rice porridges. And a lot of them will be either in a Tetra pack or a glass bottle. And from there you source this, and then it's just about like getting it to love on some meat.
When you get it from said procurement, does it go bad, or because it's a mold, it's just like good forever? Or?
So at this point, the actual mold itself, like you end up killing it. So you grow it for 36 to 48 hours. It produces all these crazy enzymes that do all this delicious food, flavor things and tenderization to the meat. And then after that, the mold itself is dead. It can start to grow again because it's gone through its life cycle and its spores, its seeds are there, and more can grow eventually. But the mold's done, and you've essentially, your job when you work with Koji is to kind of act as a farmer, and the product you want is the digestive juices of the mold. I know this sounds super weird, but when we talk about like microbes that help us out in food, everybody's got to understand that these microbes are like eating bits of our food, and they're metabolizing those bits and then secreting bits that preserve our food. So they're basically eating our food, pooping the food they just ate back onto our food to preserve it so it's safe for us and it tastes good.
Makes sense.
So, you get into these realms of like, what's actually happening? Are we actually using the mold when we use Koji? But no, we're growing it so we can extract its digestive juices, because that's what creates flavor for us and really good aromas and helps with all these other things like tenderization and texture and whatnot. So, at this point, you've wanted to obtain these enzymes. That's the digestive juices. So getting these pre-made products where you haven't had to grow the mold and then turn it into the Shio Koji, because there's steps in that, or turn it into the Amazake, you can get it ready to go and ready-made. You can also find inoculated grains, so either rice or barley, that have the mold that's been grown onto it already. And then those are low temperature dried. so the enzymes are preserved. And that stuff too, you could get that and powder it up and use it in part of your cure and still get enzymatic benefit that way too. So there's many ways you can do this, but the goal is to get these enzymes and get them onto your food somehow.
So we're going to stop there for a second. I'm going to tell everybody about Primo Grills. And then when we come back, we're going to recircle into the live fire community. We're going to talk about using Koji on the 4 big meats: ribs, chicken, pork shoulder, and brisket, best ways, and then what we can expect when we do that. Is that all right with you?
Yeah, that sounds good. We can even talk about some no sugar barbecue sauces that actually taste sweet.
All right. So
some fun stuff we can talk about, Greg.
Stand by, and we'll be right back with Jeremy Umansky from Larder Delicatessen right there on West 29th Street on the west side of Cleveland, Hingetown, for those that know. What do we love about ceramic cookers? We love that they are fuel efficient. We love that they can achieve low and slow temperatures for traditional barbecue meats. We also love that they can get rip-roaring hot for the high-temperature grilling of steaks and other thin cuts. But what's missing in the everyday lineup of ceramic cookers? The real ability to do true two-zone cooking. Two-zone cooking is very important to both professional and backyard cooks. It's the best way to manage a fire and cook with confidence. However, getting a two-zone fire and a round ceramic cooker isn't very realistic. Why? Because it's round. Enter Primo Grill and the game-changing oval design. The shape gives you the ability to execute that two-zone setup that you desire, but it also gives you all the other ceramic grill benefits as well. So when you break it down, there's more than 60 different ways to cook on a Primo cooker, so you're only limited by your culinary imagination. You can find a dealer near you by visiting primogrill.com because they are only sold through dealers. They have all the accessories that you want, including a rotisserie, a pizza insert, and more items to come. By the way, as I had mentioned last week when I was at the HPB Expo a couple weeks ago, I did see firsthand and in person the Primo XXL, the one that's 25% bigger than the old biggest one, the XL. So if you're looking for something that has a little bit more capacity, the XXL is out. And once again, you can find all these ceramic ovals at a dealer near you. Find it at primogrill.com. Here's the bottom line. Best ceramics in the biz, patented technology, true two-zone cooking capabilities in multiple sizes. And if you have to have a round one, they do have those, but we always recommend the ovals. Check them and feel them, and then take one home that's best for you. Get educated by the sales staff at the dealer, and away you go. Follow Primo on Facebook and Instagram. It's primogrill.com. That's primogrill.com. We are back with more Jeremy Umansky right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
This segment brought to you by Fireboard. Monitor up to 6 different temperatures simultaneously. Connect to Wi-Fi for cloud-based monitoring, or connect via Bluetooth. If you have smart speakers in your home, you're in luck because Fireboard fully integrates with all of them. Find out more by visiting fireboard.com or call 816-945-2232. And don't forget about that Fireboard Spark. I've been using mine like crazy over the last week and a half, and it works really well. One-channel Fireboard and an instant read meat thermometer, fireboard.com. And we're back with Jeremy Umansky from Larder Delicatessen and the co-author of Koji Alchemy. All right, so we're going to talk about putting Koji on our 4 big barbecue meats that all the live fire enthusiasts love. So let's start with chicken. How do we want to use it, and what can we expect a Koji to do to chicken?
So one thing I want people to kind of keep in mind is Koji can actually help you create some shortcuts to getting some really good smoke.
Great.
You know, one of the things too, a lot of people, you know, after they come out of their wet brine or their cure, whatever they're doing, you know, you got to let that meat dry out and get good pellicle formation, right? You want that good tacky, sticky surface, and, you know, a good dry out that can take 10 hours. That can be overnight, you know, a piece of fish, a piece of chicken, whatever it is. So Koji, actually, when we use a liquid marinade like this Amazaki, there's so many free, simple sugars in there that we don't have to fully dry out. We can literally go out of the wet cure right into the smoker, and all the smoke still sticks on the skin as if a pellicle was there because there's all these free sugars attached from the Koji. So that's really cool. And I really like what that does to a whole smoked chicken. Literally, I take the Amazaki, I rub the whole chicken in it. I will salt my meat. If I'm eating it hot or cold, it depends. Some things you smoke and then you chill and you enjoy them. Other things you serve them hot. So, stuff that I'm typically gonna be eating hot fresh, I salt to about 1.75%. I lately have been doing a lot of work with silky chickens. You ever see these things, Craig?
No, I haven't.
You got to go to your county fair. Maybe we'll meet up at the Lake County Fair, the Cuyahoga County Fair, one of them, and we'll go see them. The silkies look like they have a pom pom, like a cotton ball on their head, and they got these fluffy, really feathery feathers, and they just look like a walking cotton ball. But they're really cool because they have a genetic defect that A, gives them an extra toe on each foot, and B, makes all of their blood, skin, flesh, and organs black.
Hmm.
So they have a lot of melanin, just like someone, who from Africa who has a lot of melanin in their skin. These chickens are the same way. So we've been messing around with those a lot. And just the marinade, we do about 1.75% salt by weight on that animal. Whether you want to spatchcock it or not, whether you want to bone it out or not, it's inconsequential, right? Because we're cooking to a finished temperature on here. And I get it in the Amazaki, and I'll typically, as little as an hour is enough to really get some great flavor development and some color enhancement on there. And I'll tell you what the Amazaki does to the skin of that chicken as it smokes and renders down. A lot of the aromatic compounds that Koji can create from fats are just really high note delicious. They smell like sweet roasted fat and just caramelization and just that waft of just yeasty beefiness. So Koji creates that even out of a chicken. So putting the Amazaki on there, 1.75% salt. I'll typically smoke, I've got a Green Mountain grill over here. Great off pellet smoker. It does great for me at home. On that thing, I'll go nice and low. I'll have that thing running 175 for a bit, let that go a couple hours. And then maybe to crisp up the skin, that last finish, I'll bump that grill up, or even do it under my broiler in my oven at home. And it's just incredible what it does. The moisture retention, if you're adding Koji in, you're brining before, and you add some of that enzymatic action in, you're going to notice it's way more juicy. It's more flavorful. It's just the way to go. It just works so good. My favorite pairing is Koji and beef fat, but with a whole chicken, a whole smoked chicken, that's really where you let it shine. Because what are you talking about? You're talking about a chicken, a little bit of salt, some seasoning, and smoke, So really, really showcasing that chicken for what it is. And I hope everybody's getting chickens that have that bright yellow sunshine, yellow fat on them. Chickens that have been running around in someone's yard eating bugs and stuff and getting all fat on, other animals and living their real chicken dinosaur life that they still live. So, you want to show that in its true light. You want to add some beautiful smoke to that and take care of it for a little bit. Literally just that Amazaki, some salt. That's all you need.
All right, what about ribs? And does it matter if we're using St. Louis spares or baby back ribs?
Yeah, when it comes to ribs, kind of, blanket again, going back to the chicken, just that simplicity, right? And ribs, I feel, don't necessarily become about the flavor of the meat. It comes about how the spices were balanced and the crust was put on there, and all of those things that the meat got flavored with. Right? We're not eating the meat off of a rib because it's the most flavorful cut on an animal. That's just not the case. We're adding so much to ribs to make them extra flavorful, I have an Eastern European Jewish deli, and we serve just plain smoked ribs sometimes. And people are like, oh, these are ribs? This is just plain smoked meat, and there isn't much on this bone. So, I feel ribs, it's all about what you bring to them, and how you treat them as you're cooking them. It's not actually about the inherent flavor of the meat. So Koji does a lot of things. And I think a really great way to really hammer in on ribs and kind of bring some of that Chinese smoker hanging oven kind of flavor to things is just a good miso rub down. Find your favorite miso. A lot of misos, especially the commercial ones that you're going to get, from the Asian market or even the regular supermarket, they're going to hover around 10% salt. So just do a nice kind of reasonable layer. Maybe take a few if I had a whole rack of pork ribs, I would take maybe 5 tablespoons of miso, thin it out with about 5 tablespoons of water, Or maybe I'd use even something sweet, maybe put a little molasses in there, or you can get sweeteners made from Koji. They make them, they're all over, rice syrup, all sorts of things. So maybe dilute a little bit of that in there and then rub it on the ribs, let them sit an hour to overnight, and then just get them on the smoker. The flavor you're going to get is just absolutely incredible. You're going to bring out the inherent umami of the muscle, the meat itself. You're really going to shine that, and you're going to pick up on the flavor of the pork ribs, and not just all the smoke and the cure and everything you've added to it. You're actually going to get some really good, unctuous, umami, meaty flavor out of them. So I think miso and pork ribs just go so well together.
Pork shoulder is much more fatty than the baby back rib. Spare rib, obviously the fattier of the ribs, but when we talk about pork shoulder, you able to do a little bit more stuff with that because there is more fat in it?
Yeah, potentially you are. But once again, shoulder is something you want to go long, low, and slow with, right? So I think the first thing you have to do is ask yourself, how long and low is low and slow? Because Koji's enzymes, these enzymes are types of proteins, right? So proteins, let's think of the well done mark. Let's take 165. These enzymes are like little Pac-Man. They're running around doing all those, even though they're not alive, they're moving around doing all sorts of things and making your food really tasty and tender. And they're most active synced with certain temperatures. In fact, 140 degrees Fahrenheit is an optimal temperature, and 165 is when they stop. They're done. Their protein is denatured. They've unraveled. They can't move around and do their thing anymore. So if you're cooking low enough, you can actually accelerate the work that the Koji's doing. So let's say you hold that pork butt for about 4 hours at 140 before you kick it up to the next level. Maybe you're going to hold it there at 180, for a couple hours, and then keep going until you finally hit your internal mark that you're looking for in your butt. You can actually couple those lower temperatures and compound and actually double, triple, or even quadruple the enzymatic action and the flavor creation of the Koji. So something like a pork shoulder, like Shio Koji, is a great bet. Because of there's more fat, Shio Koji has these higher note aromas to it that are more akin to like honey and flowers and tropical fruit, people say. You pick up a lot of that in the Shio Koji. Depending on the Amazaki, you can too. But you put that on, and that goes so great with the fat of most animals. So really getting that on there, rubbing it on there, and then monitoring your low and slow, maybe starting in that 140 range, so you can actually hyperactivate the enzymes that the Koji has brought to the party, create tons of flavor while you're actually cooking, and before you get to the point where the enzymes aren't really doing much anymore and they've just kind of done their part. So, there's a lot of strategy that can be involved with optimizing the Koji and how it can work for you.
Obviously, the last one is brisket, beef brisket, which I assume Koji is right in the wheelhouse of.
Yeah, man. So at Larder, a slow week, we're going through 150 pounds of brisket.
Yeah, wow.
Keep in mind, we're only open 5 days a week for like 7 hours a day, something like that, So we go through a lot of brisket. We use a lot of Koji. And what we primarily use for that is the Amazaki. So it's this kind of porridge with all Koji's enzymes and everything that doesn't have the salt added to it. The reason for that is we're very specific with the salt content of our pastrami. The salt content on there is 2.25%. We do use cure to 0.25%. We flip-flop back and forth. Sometimes we do a mix of pink and celery. Sometimes it's all celery. Sometimes it's pink. We go back and forth sometimes. We cure to that percentage. And while it's on cure, the liquid that's kind of in there in that brine is straight Amazaki. We do a couple other things to our pastrami too, because I can go from a raw brisket to on your sandwich in 3 days if I want to. And you would have sworn I had that under cure for a month and then, slow cooked it for a few days.
Wow.
So when we do this, there's a couple things that we do that we find really important. We mechanically tenderize our brisket. So we butcher it a very specific way. We get whole briskets in. We butcher them a very specific way where we seam out directly point and decal. Once we get to the tail end of the decal and it's still attached to the point, we cut it so that the tail of the decal is stuck on the point. turn the point into 2 pieces, the decal into 1, and then we do jacquard everything.
Mm.
And we end up with a decal that's as thick as a point after we've jacquarded everything. We have even curing times throughout everything, equal penetration from the outside to the center. And like I said, we can do this in 72 hours and have a finished pastrami.
Wow.
Something that notoriously is under cure for a month roughly, whether it's brine or dry. And some people, I know Katz's, they smoke their pastrami for like 3 or 4 days straight, low and slow. We don't do that. We do a 6 to 8 in our Chinese hanging smoker that we use at the restaurant. And then we do a multi-hour steam the next day after a full day rest after the smoke. But what it does, I mean, I can only, I guess, speak to what I've been told, and we serve apparently some of the best pastrami in America. So that's what Koji does to a beef brisket. It turns it into one of the best things you've ever eaten. We also, we go the opposite end too with brisket, Greg. And I think I fed this to you before. We make something that looks like prosciutto, but it's made out of beef brisket. And we just slice it thin, and it's so delicious too. I mean, to eat that and to eat a piece of pastrami next to each other and realize they're the same cut of meat, your mind's just like, what the hell just happened?
You've given me slices of fat, like on the meat boards. At times when you have it, there is a section of beef fat, which is delicious.
Yeah, so on the underside of the brisket, you get this kind of like a kidney-shaped or bean-shaped kind of hunk of fat that comes on the underside of the brisket. And, a lot of people just rip that out or cut that out and just, it's scrap, it's grind. So it's got this great striation from the decal that's kind of attached to it. And literally we cure that just like, prosciutto or any other fine charcuterie. Like we put that piece of meat that's normally thrown away through the charcuterie making process. And then we slice it. And, my old business partner, Kenny, he's like, it's like lardo, but it's from beef. It's suet. So he started calling it pseudo. And that's what we stuck with it. But yeah, that's another way. We do a whole bunch with saving as much of that brisket as we can. And the goal is, right, like whether you're a chef or you're at home, you don't want to buy a hunk of meat and trim it up and like have this scrap that you can't do anything with.
Right.
Or just end up with a boring pot of stock or like something stupid like bolognese sauce. Something you can't cook on the grill. I no offense to people that love bolognese sauce. My daughter is named Emilia after Emilia Romagna, and Bologna is a city there. I love bolognese sauce. So, but to be able to buy something, a hunk of meat, treat it right, honor that animal. You want to eat every last bit on there. So butchering it in ways where you can keep fat in different places that maybe it wasn't there before, and that sort of thing. We have a lot of fun with it.
I want to ask you about this specifically before we wrap it up here this evening, and that's the use of Koji on steaks in order to attain dry-aged flavors or something that would be akin to dry age. I'm a big dry-age guy. I've had 100-day dry age. I haven't gone crazy, mostly because I haven't found anybody that's really stretched it out anywhere past 100
I'm gonna have to do something for a year for you.
Please. So yeah, that's right, because you got the dry ager in the shop anyway. But so I'm good. I know I'm good at 100 days. My wheelhouse currently is 60 to 75, but I wasn't offended at the higher days. But the first I had heard about Koji was I can get dry aged flavor in record time and not have to stick primals in a dry age machine in order to attain this. So if somebody wants to try it out, tell us how to do it, and then also the time Koji needs to be on it for X amount of time in order to give you what would be akin to X amount of time in a dry age.
Yeah. So, and once again, there's a kind of, we talked about, there's a few different levels to entry, right? Do I want to get the spore from Japan, from a maker there and grow it and do all this stuff? Or do I want to have something that it's kind of easier for me to jump right in and work with, So, with the dry aging flavors, so a lot of the aromas that Koji creates on a microscopic level are also aromas that other molds create during the dry aging process. Koji just happens to do this in hours instead of like days, months, and weeks. All right. So when you typically dry age something, you have it in there for a long period of time, and all these different molds grow on it, and enzymatic activity within the meat itself. All this works together as this like cacophony and symphony to create these aroma and flavor profiles we associated with dry aged food. The great thing is Koji does that on meat naturally with its enzymatic activity much faster, almost instantaneously when we compare. So after like a 48-hour Koji treatment on a steak, you are literally creating on a microscopic level the same flavor compounds that the other molds and bacteria and the enzymatic action in the meat took 30 days to achieve on its own, just sitting there. So it's not the exact same. It's a bit different, but when it comes down to it, it's like a 75% flavor match. These dry age flavors. So, there's so much complexity to dry aging to like really replicate dry aging. You can't. You just got to dry age something, There's really no shortcuts. But the good thing is Koji on a microscopic level does the same thing as dry aging on a much faster timeline. So it can create very similar phasers very fast. And there's a number of ways you can do this. So if you want to go all into it, you can literally, just like we ferment meat, right? Summer sausage, sopressata, right? Even dry cured stuff. Like it doesn't matter wet cook. We ferment meat. Like this is a cool thing. People listening should be like, oh yeah, we ferment meat. It's cool. I'm not going to kill anybody. So we can actually take a steak, add a little bit of starch because the mold does need some starch. It can't just grow on pure protein like a muscle, cut a muscle. So we mix a little bit of the Koji spores with a little bit of like cornstarch or rice flour or even AP flour if you want. And we put this on the steak. And I shit you not, we will then hold that steak at roughly 90 degrees Fahrenheit and 90 degrees humidity for about 48 hours. The same thing you do when you ferment meat. Now, mind you, you're doing that with ground meat when you make a summer sausage, right? Anytime we work with ground meat from a food safety standpoint, that's a nightmare. That's oh my God, we're taking everything from the outside, we're grinding it in, we're mixing it, we're spreading it everywhere. A whole cut of meat, most things that will make us sick, that sort of thing, are just surface dwelling. They can't get in. That's the beauty of food safety. That's why we can just sear a steak and it still be safe to eat, Right. Poultry's a whole nother story, but we won't get into that now. So we can literally hold the steak there, 90 degrees, 90% humidity. The mold will grow beautifully on the outside if you've done this all right. And the mold produces its most amount of enzymes when it's actually alive and growing. But everything we do with Koji happens after the mold is dead and it's no longer growing. So this technique creates some of the most interesting flavors, and a lot of the taste testing we've done of like this compared to dry aged beef, and we've done this hand in hand with certified Angus beef in their culinary center with their bovine anatomists, like their PhD butchers, and a 48-hour steak with some mold growing on it pretty much takes like a 30-day dry age steak.
Wow.
Some even argue, it can get funky enough that it's pushing that 45-day envelope as far as like the yeasty notes and the cheesy profile that this mold can create on protein. So if you really want to go crazy, you can do that. Now, the other option is that can be really tricky. If you haven't grown Koji on a lot of like rice or barley or been comfortable just growing it, you don't want to jump into meat and grow it on there. You're going to you're going to waste a lot of meat until you're comfortable with this process. So the other thing you can do is get that dried Koji we talked about earlier, the rice it's already been grown on and dried, or the barley. You get that, you powder it up, and you rub your steak with it. You leave it in your fridge for 48 hours, 36 hours. And then you take that steak, whether you want to scrape off the powdered Koji rice or barley that you put on there, or leave it on and add more spices to it and then put it on the grill. You're going to be like, I can never eat beef without Koji again the rest of my life.
And same profile, 2 days, 3 days is going to be, or 2 days is going to be akin to a 30-day dry age.
Yeah. Wow. And that's rough. And like, keep in mind, we're not trying to say that this is a replacement for dry age or anything. Like, it's a separate process that creates flavors in a fraction of the time that are very, very similar. So in its own right, it's its own thing and this great thing. But those of you that are like, man, I don't have a dry ager at home, I don't have a cabinet, or I don't have a setup for that, and it's really expensive stuff. Well, you want to you want to buy a chuck and like butcher out the back end of the ribeye, out of that chuck and have some really nice steaks for yourselves. And, at that chuck price, rub it down with Koji or maybe grow a little bit and not worry about it. You're off to the races, man. You're going to have a great experience.
Maybe what we have to do is I'm going to buy a chunk of meat and throw it in your ager, and we're going to take that time to get it to 100 days. And then as we are encroaching on the finish of that, we will then cut off some steaks, not from that one, but from a different one, and then Koji those up and try and meet as close as we can to a replicated 100 days of Koji and then the real 100 days of the dry age and have a blind taste test and see which one we like better.
You bet. I'm all about it. We got to do it. It's going to be so much fun.
Koji and helping make a sweet barbecue sauce without the use of actual sugars and stuff. How do we do that real quick?
So, the same way that Koji's enzymes work on protein, which is what we've been talking a lot about, it does the same thing with starch into sugar. So you can take tomatoes, you can add a little bit of this Umansky we've been talking about, and slow simmer it while you're cooking, right? We talked about this temperature range that these enzymes can work in. So if you're simmering that sauce at 140 to 150 degrees with just tomatoes and a little bit of Umansky in it, you're never going to have to add sugar because the Koji's enzymes will turn the starches in the flesh of the tomato into the sugars that they're made up out of. It's like a key unlocking everything. So you can actually create like really flavorful food without having to add a bunch of extra stuff that you're like, hey, most of us that tend to grill and barbecue, the healthfulness of things going into our body isn't always, we're eating smoked processed meat. Like, let's be frank here, Yep. So being able to take kind of little steps like cut back on the sugar a little bit or use the sugar that's inherent in the ingredients you're already using to create sweet flavors, I think is really, really cool. And literally it's as simple as like taking that Umansky or some active enzyme containing Koji product and low temp cooking your barbecue sauce as it going. You're never going to have to add any sugar. Maybe you're going to want to add a touch of honey to get the honey flavor or a little bit of molasses to get the molasses flavor, but you don't need it as a thickener, as a sweetener or anything like that because Koji can create that. And I think one last thing that's kind of really cool too is Koji can debitter things. So those of you that are kind of hitting roadblocks as to what do I do with all my burnt ends and this, I'm saving them, I got a bag of them in the freezer, this sort of thing. Literally, you talked about the testicles and the heart I fed you the other day, this miso made from these parts of the animal. Your burnt ends, you can kind of put through a similar process. And Koji actually on a molecular level will break apart the bitter tasting compounds so they don't taste bitter. Did I feed you a lemonade the other day?
Koji lemonade. Yeah, I had that a couple weeks ago. It was insane.
Yeah, literally, man, we take whole lemons and throw them in the blender with Koji. You'd think that'd be bitter as hell, like the peel, the pith, the seeds, everything, right. And it's not. So like Koji, if it sits with things for a little bit, can actually debitter them. So you can take your burnt ends, you can run them through the meat grinder. You can add a percentage of Koji, add a percentage of salt that's in line with the ratios for making miso. Let it sit for a few weeks, whether cold or room temperature, depending on how much salt you added to stabilize it. And it will literally debitter these things. And then you've got like a meat spread. I can't tell you, man, that like heart and testicle paste. Like we just did lamb ribs the other day. We finished them up today on the menu. What do you think they were rubbed with?
Really?
Yeah, the same thing I said to do with the pork ribs. I took like a few tablespoons of that lamb testicle and heart miso, thinned it with a little water. That was on the ribs overnight, and then the next morning they got crusted and put in the smoker, man.
Did you make the challah spread too?
Really cool things you can. Yeah, like you could turn your burnt ends back into the marinade that you're then going to make more burnt ends with.
Like it's like sour mash of whiskey, right?
Yeah, like sour mash, or think of like ramen culture in Japan. Like there's some ramen restaurants that have had the same pot boiling for like 200 years, and every day they serve everything but like a quart of that, and then they refill it and build it up, and they keep the spirit of the batch going, right. Or the sausage makers that backslop, or charcuterie makers, or anybody that keeps these cultures going. Like it's really cool, and like I said, you can turn your burnt ends into the seasoning and flavoring that you're then going to rub on a brisket and make more burnt ends or a tri-tip or whatever you're doing, So it's really cool. We make this, as we're getting ready to wrap up, Greg, we make this product called Jewish penicillin. So we take, when we make the chicken stock, all the little bones and shredded bits of meat in the mirepoix, we grind that, we mix it with Koji and a bunch of salt, and then we let it sit for like a year. And this stuff is like the most intense chicken bouillon ever. Bro, we just take it and we rub it all over all the chicken we cook in the restaurant. We're literally taking like chicken that we preserved into a spice and a seasoning now and rubbing it on the chicken that we're going to be cooking. And like, you can do these really cool things, Koji's so much fun.
I don't know what else to say. You've said it all. You're blowing everybody's mind here, especially mine, and you're local to me. I mean, it's a blessing that I was introduced to you by a guy I have coming up in the second hour, Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly, who said, hey, have you ever been to Larder? This was a number of years ago, and we literally left Mabel's Barbecue and shot right down to the store and was introduced to you and all the wonderful things that you were doing. I've been a big fan ever since, as you know, so... this has been
well, thanks, Greg. And Dan's awesome, man. He better come back to visit soon. I need to feed him.
Hopefully he will come back, and when he does, I will be in tow, no doubt about it, and we'll catch up then. Anyway, this is Jeremy Umansky. You find him larderdb.com, buy his book Koji Alchemy that he co-wrote as well. Can you please enlighten me on the co-author name, please, so we give him just due?
Oh yeah, Richard Shee is my co-author. Rich is based out of Boston. And, anybody out there that's looking to get into Koji, whether you reach out to me, and I'm always slow to respond, especially the online platforms. But Rich is hyper responsive. You can find him at Our Cook Quest, and he loves some good barbecue with Koji.
Jeremy, really appreciate the time tonight, and we will talk to you again soon.
All right, Greg. Have a great evening. I look forward to feeding you soon.
All right, take care, pal. That's Jeremy Umansky. And when I say we'll be talking again soon, that means like tomorrow. Time for Chicken Sando. No doubt. All right. So, as Meathead generated buzz about Koji back in January, hopefully we have been able to answer a multitude of questions. Maybe you were thinking about getting into this. Maybe you have now been inspired to get into this. Now you know where to go. The book is a good place to start. The reference material of our day and our time on Koji Alchemy, which can be found wherever books are sold if you read books. We are over into the second hour, so I'm going to do an abridged closeout, and then it will also be an abridged second top. And then we'll get to Wes Ride and Daniel Vaughn in the second hour, so we will wrap the first hour right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
And we thank Jeremy Umansky for joining us for the last two segments plus. Larder DB, like Delta Bravo, larderdb.com, the restaurant website. Koji Alchemy is the book. Buzzed BBQ Company. Okay, what the F is Koji actually? It's a spore that you grow on rice, and when you grow a gram or 4 grams of it, it makes 400 pounds worth of Koji. Or you can buy the bottled stuff and get it that way. The Shio Koji, and then there's also Amazake. So go to Amazon or go to your Asian markets and hook up with some of that. There's some great Asian markets right here in Bomb City, USA on the east side that I can pick up at, or I just might go to Amazon. I think I'm going to start getting into this, and we are definitely doing the real 100-day dry age and the Koji dry age towards 100 days and have a blind taste test. So check back in 100 days from now, which was going to be like July. Maybe we'll shoot for a July 10th taste test because that's my birthday. Yeah. All right, we are pointed to the second hour, which we will have a 4-minute top. And then we will catch the clock up and be right back. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show right here on the Barbecue Central Network.
Happy to have you aboard here for the Really Big Barbecue Show.
We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me!
Fine, how you doing?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle. Charbono! It's all about the charbono, dude.
Succulent fish. What?
He ate 54 wieners.
But listen, Lavernius, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
And just like that, we are into the second hour. It's the Barbecue Central Show, where we talk about live fire barbecue and grilling items of only the highest magnitude and order. Still to come on the show this evening, Wes Wright from cookoutnews.com, and then closing out the show with Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly Barbecue. If you missed the first hour and change, too bad for you. You just missed Jeremy Umansky break Koji down the likes of nobody else. The foremost authority on Koji. You learned all about it, how you do it on chicken, ribs, pork butt, brisket. Also, how you would make a dry-aged steak. And he said 75 to 80% flavor match on what a real dry-age would do, except in 2 days, you can have what would be akin to a 30-day dry age. So for me, better part of a week, you got damn near 100-day dry age flavor. So easier for me to do a week than it is an actual 100 days, which is a week longer than 3 months. I'm that smart. I figured that all out on my own. We say good evening to those of you watching tonight through our video streaming platforms, Facebook and Twitch /BBQ Central Show. Also over on YouTube /RD Rempe. And of course, our friends listening audibly on Clubhouse. We also have an update on the YouTube poll question of the week. Which fuel do you prefer to cook with, gas, charcoal, or wood? And it is a dead heat right now. Charcoal and wood sitting at 48% and gas sitting at 5%. Finally, one or two of you ballied up and said, hey, now, we love gas, so I certainly appreciate that. It's not my favorite, but I'm certainly not ashamed to say that gas is one of my more favorite cooking fuels. But in the end, for me, my favorite way to cook is wood, followed by charcoal, and a close third is gas. So while it does rank 3 out of 3, I use gas quite frequently, but more for convenience, and I just like it. But if I have to pick, it's got to be wood. There's no doubt for me. But that's just the way I like it. You have your own. The Barbecue Show and YouTube is saying, I went to Walmart but forgot my wallet. Koji came out of nowhere and paid my bill. Thank you, Koji. Give me a hell yeah, Koji.
Give me a hell yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank God. Magic Koji everywhere. Not only is it adding dry age, it's paying for people's grocery at Walmart. Just keep that to yourself, Kinger, because you mentioned Koji popped out of your wallet and paid for things, especially in Walmart. People are going to be asking you to borrow your Koji. And who knows what kind of a bill or tab Koji has before now it is in the wrecking book. Who knows? Hey, coming up on the best moments of the Barbecue Central Show in 10 minutes or less, episode 274, taking you back to September 6th, 2006. And what is it? The first ever podcast ever, not live show, first ever production ever made as it relates to my time in the live fire industry. Is it great? Yes. It is greatly bad. It's really bad, especially if you compare it to the last 10 years of doing shows. However, this was way back in a time when no one knew about podcasting. Most people still didn't grasp what podcasting is or even how to use it both as a learning tool or marketing tool these days. So if you run it back to 2006, you can only imagine the Blake stares I was getting as I asked someone if they wanted to be on a podcast. I did have a guest on this show, believe it or not. The guest sounded better than me, both audibly and from a confidence perspective. And as I bring up audio quality here, the technology back then was scarce. On top of that, I had no background in audio or production of any sort. So I used what was available to me at the time, and like most things for me, free. That was Telcaster, founded by a guy named Hoyt Prysock, a visionary of podcasting business. Of course, the downside to this technology was it was an interface. It was, in essence, a glorified teleconference room, and that's what it recorded. So if you listen on Friday and you wonder why everybody sounds like they're on the phone, it's because everybody was on the phone.
Get that freak stuff out of here.
This is where we were in the beginning of the show. We've evolved from that point to where we are today, which is the audio standard for the entire broadcast podcast industry. I have raised the bar. I have set the standard of excellence that every show should be striving to meet on terrestrial radio, on satellite radio, on all podcasts. I have raised the bar. I'm asking everybody to meet my standard. So as you tune in to the Best Moment Show this Friday, realize that this is where the show all started from. This is the very point. This is the origin story of the Barbecue Central show that you will hear both Friday and then the following Friday. John has split it up into a undoctored 2-part series, so you can hear the whole thing. The very first show, this is where it all started. And no mean emails to me about how bad it is, because guess what? I lived it.
Get that freak stuff out of here.
Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast in order to get it. But if you ever wanted to hear the first show ever, this is the one you want to check out on Tuesday. And again, save your constructive criticism because you're 18 years too late. Wes Wright is ready to rock and roll. Before we get to him, let's learn about Big Papa Smokers. What do we know? The one-stop online shop for all things barbecue. A fantastic selection of products, handpicked by Sterling Big Papa Ball himself. You know about the popular flavors of rubs and seasonings: Sweet Money, Cattle Prod, Cash Cow, Double Secret Steak, Jalapeno Hallelujah, all the 13 perfectly balanced flavors. You know them, you love them. Winning on competition circuits, winning in backyards all over the country and the world. Also owners of Granny's Barbecue Sauce. So if you're looking for a new go-to sauce, try out Granny's. If you're sick of what's currently out there or you've had enough of that. They're also selling cookers of all shapes and sizes. If you're looking for a versatile smoker that's easy to use, check out that Mac 2-star General Pellet Cooker. Big Papa Smokers, the exclusive Mac dealer, even offering special packages. If you're not a fan of pellet smokers, or you're not sure what grill you might want, give them a call. Ask questions, 877-828-0727. That's 877-828-0727, or shop their website at bigpapasmokers.com. That's BIGPOPPA smokers.com. And we'll be back with Wes Wright after this. Stick around. Be right back.
Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central show.
And this portion being brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker. The most unbelievable outdoor cooking device on the planet, currently available in 3 sizes with a host of accessories. Doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a professional, it's a cooker you want to add to that arsenal. Visit pitbarrelcooker.com. Check out the sizes and buy the one that best fits you, and tell them the Barbecue Central show sent you. My next guest tonight is the creator of cookoutnews.com and the third Tuesday of the month regular guest, here to talk about the latest news in the live fire industry. So we welcome back our pal Wes Wright. Wes, let's start with big names and work through the rest of it here during our time this evening. We'll talk Traeger first. And in a shocker to me, Meter is the biggest and best thing going at Traeger right now, at least in Q4 of 2022. Poised to grow?
Yeah, Meter's doing great for them. I was surprised in their last earnings call. They talked about how amazing it's going, and it's really, it's made accessories grow a ton for them. It's going so well that they actually had to take out a loan to pay $15 million for something called an earnout. When you buy a company, you set performance targets for it. And if they meet or exceed them, you get a bonus to that company that you bought. So earnout is just a fancy word for bonus, but they had to draw down from their credit line to pay for $15 million next year because they're overperforming. And yeah, they should grow too, because they started getting into Home Depot in December. So, it'll take a little time for them to roll out there, but that's a big revenue stream, obviously.
Is it good for a business to have to take a loan in order to pay bonus?
Ideally, that's probably not the way they planned it. They bought Meter when things were still going great in the height of the pandemic. But it does mean that they're exceeding what, the people that bought them thought they would do. So it's good in that aspect. But, when you're a little strapped for cash like Traeger is, they probably don't want to be paying that right now.
The way Meter is set up right now, they're kind of the only kid on the block. Now, Combustion Inc. is certainly coming up at a pretty rapid rate at this point. It's got a gauge that's 40% less than what the Meter would leave in the meat. It appears to be working very well. With more competition, do you see Meter continuing its thrive, or the minute somebody else that comes up that's comparable or even better? Because, in my estimation, there's still a lot of knocks against Meter, regardless of how well the sales are. I think the performance still lacks a lot of luster. So the minute something else comes along that is performing better and was in that same pricing threshold, that thing could drop like a tank.
Yeah, it's how much of that, Traeger cachet, I guess, rubs off on a Meter. There's people that just love Traeger products. It'll be interesting, though, if some of those other companies, and I know you had a guest on recently who ran one, and he was saying that his performs better than Meter. If they can, work out a deal with grill companies, so I can't think of hardly any, if any, other grills, pellet grills that come with Bluetooth thermometers. So if they can start to, work out package deals when you buy them, I think that's the foothold in that'll start to, bring some competition to that.
How do you think Traeger ended the year last year? Better than anticipated?
It's hard to say. Their grill sales were down 52%. So that's never, a headline you want to go into. It's hard to know how much inventory is built up, and that was the reason why, their sales were so terrible, or if that's a sign of things to come. They're going to have a little bit of trouble, though, because they have that glut of inventory, and then they introduce new products. So there's extra SKUs that they have to get into the market and balance all that. They beat their own expectations that they put out there, and I think largely their stock people that owned it were happy with it. But it really, I don't think anyone would be happy with a 52% loss. It seems like every grill company's, though, saying, don't judge us off previous years, let's go back to 2019 as the baseline. That's the messaging we're hearing. So
when I'm looking at the Traeger numbers, is it, when they're counting sales, is it just either through distributor or dealers? It's not like you buying a Traeger and then that counts as a sale for them, right?
Yeah, so that's the problem, is that, let's say like Home Depot has a bunch of Traegers sitting around that they need to sell. So if I go buy a Traeger from Home Depot, that's not necessarily a sale for Traeger unless Home Depot replenishes what I bought. And what we're hearing is that retailers are doing something called destocking. So they're lowering the number of inventory that they have of the grills. So they're not replenishing that, which means that they're not buying from Traeger. And another thing too worth mentioning from their call is they said one of the largest retailers, I'm guessing it's Home Depot, is coming out with their own private label pellets. And so they're seeing some pain from that in the consumables side, that, they're going to sell their own pellets rather than Traeger's.
Given all the turnover in the industry's top positions amongst many other companies, are you surprised that Traeger CEO is still in place?
I think what's unique about him is he owns so much of the company, and he has a lot of goodwill from, where he brought Traeger from. So my guess is if they can do okay through this summer, he'll be okay. If they're anything like Weber, is turning into, then I would say he'll he'll have a lot tougher go staying in his seat.
I would venture a guess, though, that Traeger isn't in that position. I mean, Weber seemed to be out of their depths for whatever reason.
Yeah, Weber had way more debt than Traeger did. So as long as they can keep lowering inventory, keep sales up, I think he'll be okay. And a lot of it is just he's established credibility, and they do have a lot of positive metrics. They're real big when you listen to their calls on social media followings and things like that, and they're pretty good in that regard.
Is Traeger financially fit? If you look at shares, they're just cresting over $4, and 3 months ago they were $2.50. Towards the end of 2022, I think it's 83% down from release. A year and a half ago. So, from a fitness standpoint, they're still okay. You think?
Yeah, they're still at manageable levels of debt. That's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
They said that they're at higher debt levels than they want to be, but it's manageable. It's not out of control. It seems like everyone's just kind of holding their breath for what this summer will bring, though. Where it's with inflation and the overall consumer sentiment being what it is. I don't think anyone wants to really say how good or bad things are going to be. It's kind of I felt like a wait and see approach going forward.
They brought 2 new products to market here recently. So they did a revamped Ironwood 2 weeks later. So they unleashed the Flat Rock, which is their standalone griddle cooker. Any idea how those are being received into the market outside of seeing the social media onslaught on the days that those were being released, respectively?
I think we'll have to wait a couple months for them to start talking about sales with they just released their last quarter, was last week. So those grills were pretty fresh and hadn't been in the results previously yet. All they went off of was how it's being received in the market and via social media, but also they supplied a lot of those grills. So you're going to see a lot of social media presence. An interesting thing with that too, though, is they revamped the Timberline and they revamped the Ironwood. So that leaves the Pro model as the odd man out. And I think they have a ton of stock of that, given that at the end of last year, they were discounting it like 35-40% on Black Friday, which they never used to do. So it'll be interesting to see if people are still buying that this summer too.
I heard that the Traeger was telling dealers through a number of confirmed sources that they need to stick 8 of the Flat Rocks on their floor. Otherwise, they might risk some type of dealer status downgrade or something like this. Is that common practice, or did you hear something along the same lines by any chance?
I haven't heard that. It wouldn't surprise me. They have the upper hand with that. And if you're trying to move inventory, that's a good way to do it, is to pressure the little guys into doing it. It's obviously not the best practice to do. It's not, something I would want to stake my name to, but it's kind of the opposite of the big retailers that, I've heard from other grill companies are saying, we're not going to pay you for your whole product. So you're just going to deal with that. So, that's something too that, big box companies like Walmart have been notorious for years. I think it's just going the other way, where the manufacturer is much bigger than the retailer in this case.
Wes Wright joining us here on the show, cookoutnews.com, his website. Make sure you're checking it out if you haven't visited before and that you're signed up for the weekend refuel. You can sign up for that at the top of the page. Let's move on to Weber here, Wes. They've gone from public to private. I believe that has all been finalized now. So my question is, how often does a company race to go public only to turn back around and go private? Not even within a year of itself, but just in general, how often does that happen?
I think that's pretty rare. I couldn't name anybody else that's done that I can think of.
Wow.
That's a pretty rare scenario. I put an article up today, though, that they pretty much had to do it. They needed $350 million to almost stave off bankruptcy because they were going to be out of line with the banks. So, and part of that deal with the banks was they had to be private because they knew they would get cash into their business. So that was the only way. But yeah, going public and then year and a half, 2 years later, going back private's pretty strange.
They appear to be in a development stage of something called control by wire. So tell us a little bit about what this is, and do you feel that this might be a future of the industry type of thing?
Yeah, I think definitely that's something we'll see if not from Weber, but from somebody. That's where the whole industry is going. And I, you know, the mainly we see it with pellet grills, and connected grilling like that. But it's gas grills are a little behind on that. Other than the only real smart gas grills that I can think of is the Nevo, which came out, and Charbroil's Cruise, which came out. Those both are smart grills. But what control by wire is instead of the knob turning an actual mechanical valve that releases gas into a burner, the knob doesn't do anything by itself. It interfaces with a controller that dictates how much to open the valve. And that may sound insignificant because it's doing the same thing, but the way that Weber's patent worked is that makes it so you can make startup and shutdown easier rather than having to, turn on the gas, hit the igniter, and also, turn on the propane before that. You can all do that through one or two button presses. And then from there, it even opens the window further from being able to set recipes or control things on your phone, which, is where a lot of the grilling industry is going. So I think we'll see that for sure.
Weber launched the charcoal heat controller for $99. Good accessory?
I think it's neat. I'm gonna probably buy one and try it out myself. Because I'm a little bit lazy, so charcoal grilling doesn't always work out. But it's neat that it has multiple functions where you have a cone that you can fill up with charcoal for some high heat searing, and it really directs it. Or there's a diffuser that sits on top of that where you're supposed to be able to fill up half of it with charcoal, and you get 5 to 7 hours of 250-degree low and slow. And they claim it's supposed to be pretty effortless. So I want to see if it really is.
This would be something that is different from, I don't know if you're familiar with the Vortex that was real popular a couple of years ago, but it looked like this one has both a Vortex type of appliance there in the middle, but then it's also got a shield that will sit around and you can build charcoal around what would be the Vortex for a little bit more of a diffused heat.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It's kind of similar in principle, but with they execute it a little differently. It's a decent product for $100 to make grilling easier. I feel like they're not promoting it enough. They cut back their ad budget a lot there, and I only see images of just like the product by itself, and it doesn't really explain to you what it is. But it looks neat.
Has Weber gone a little dark as far as promotion? They released the griddle a couple weeks ago, a week ahead of when Traeger released their Flat Rock. You saw all types of fanfare for Traeger when that thing got released, but it seems like Weber is never on the big megaphone broadcasting what they're doing other than having, Mike Lang from Another Pint Please talk about it. Are they missing the boat on promotion?
So what they're doing is, because they have such a cash problem, the easiest thing to do when you're running out of money is to cut your ad budget, because it doesn't hurt you today and it might hurt you tomorrow, right? So that's an easy source of cash. So they needed money. They in their SEC filings, this is what I'm detailing. They cut down on their ad spend and their product development for 2023, banking on they can ramp it up for some big product releases in 24, and they'll turn back on the ad budget. And they kind of need that to go well to buoy their cash position. So, I'm hoping to see some bigger releases next year where these were kind of also run. I saw a trademark filing for another Weber Q, which is a big popular portable grill for them. So maybe we'll see that along with the control by wire product. That'd be my just, out of the blue guess on what we'll see next year.
There was some news as Charbroil is concerned. There was a new CEO installed. I don't know if you know anything about him or what his vision for the company is.
Yeah, I didn't. So they didn't really publicly announce that much. I ran an article on my site based off something I saw from a local paper or something like that, and I had to dig into it. I don't know much about him. He was at the company for, I want to say, a year or two prior to taking over. But yeah, it's another casualty of CEO casualty of the grill market. Is we've been through 6 or 7 across the companies since the pandemic.
Thoughts on the Edge coming into the market this grilling season in a strong way? It's been out, but really making an appearance this year.
Yeah, I think as long as you spend some money promoting it, it's gonna. I think it'll be an interesting product, and some people seem to like the Lumen, and I think this is better than that in terms of that it's a real grilling experience. It so I heard on your show actually that they're going to promote it more heavily this year, so we'll see if that catches on. They had a European version that they just released called the Smart E, which is pretty cool because it uses 220 rather than 110 volts, so it has a lot more power, more grilling area, and everything like that. But yeah, they're leading the pack on that as we're waiting for Napoleon to release their electric grill that's been put off for, I don't know, 6 months or so.
Is that going to be a 110?
Yeah, it's going to be a 110. It's a smart grill too. It's a full-size electric grill.
When I was at HPB, I was talking to a number of the manufacturers. Rule number 1 of the show applies, no names, please. And I think 3 out of the 4 of them, maybe 4 out of 4 of them, said they're not necessarily against full-size electric, but they all talked about needing 220 in order to do the right things. Do you think that is the case?
I mean, I bought an Edge just to try out, and I was getting 700 degrees out of it. It just took a little time to heat up, so you had to plan ahead almost like a pellet grill. But it performed well. I think there is a design challenge with being limited to that, but it's a legit grill. It's a smaller area, so you really would only want to grill for maybe 2-3 people, but it's a legit grill.
Connected cookers, Kamado Joe. Is this thing that's going to be taking off, or is it just like, well, we have something that's connected in case you want it in a stale ceramic cooker market?
Yeah, I think that's the hard sell, is getting more people to adopt ceramic cookers, because a lot of people, it seems like them for their more pure grilling experience. It's as opposed to using a connected, pellet grill. And if you want to just get a connected grill, why spend the money on a pretty small Kamado grill when you can get a pellet grill that does more for cheaper? So I think that's the hard sell on it. You might get some converts that are already Kamado Joe fans, but I don't see too many people jumping onto it.
What's the biggest breaking news of the week that you think is going to happen?
I'm trying to think if there's anything. I think we're just kind of waiting to spring here. It's we've had endless new grill releases leading up to now, and I think now we're just waiting for spring to start and sales to start taking off to see where we're at.
YouTube poll question of the week, and then I will let you go. Which fuel do you prefer to cook with, Wes? Gas, charcoal, or wood?
I like wood, but also I'm not gonna put down gas either, though. I like the speed of that, when you're constrained on time.
50% wood, 45% charcoal, and 5% gas. And I am not a gas hater just like you, so I appreciate its convenience. You can find Wes Wright at cookoutnews.com or at the associated social media handles. Wes, always appreciate the time, and we will see you again in April.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Greg.
You got it. It's Wes Wright. Again, his website, weswright.com, or you can find him really at cookoutnews.com. Cookoutnews.com. As I say each and every time, show up at least 3 times a week because content is going up like crazy. He's got all the inside news. It's great. A valued member and recurring guest of this show monthly now. Daniel Vaughn is ready to play. I will talk to you quickly about the National Barbecue and Grilling Association. Since 1991, NBBQA has been the voice of the barbecue and grilling industry by helping members network and learn from proven professionals. Cal Phelps looks to take the history of this organization and move it into new heights here in 2023. They did it with the annual conference a couple months ago, and now they are even moving further ahead. All the reports are in now saying that this was one of the best annual conferences they've had to date. Things are moving in the right direction, and now we'll start to see those regional conferences that they're going to be putting together. So if you've been on the fence about joining, becoming a member, don't be on the fence. Jump over. Become a member. nbbqa.org. That's nbbqa.org. Explore all the membership levels, what it gets you. And if you can't join some of these things in person, depending on where you are in the country and where they're actually being held and at what time, the good news is that NBBQA is taping everything, videoing everything. So if you can't make it out there in person, you can always get stuff on video. So you have, in essence, all the learning material, all the new reference, all the new things that are trending right at your fingertips and watch on demand whenever you want. You can go back and refresh. If you're forgetting some of the things, it's all great. NBBQA.org is the place to go, and you can explore what they're all about. And if you are in the business of barbecue, a restaurant, you're selling sauces or rubs or anything that has to do with it, it's a trade organization that you want to get involved with and support. Once again, the website, nbbqa.org. That's nbbqa.org. We're back with Daniel Vaughn right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Let's get back to a guy who has more experience giving you his opinion than he actually has cooking. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
And we thank Wes Wright for joining us last segment, the website cookoutnews.com. Helping me close the show tonight, the barbecue editor for Texas Monthly's magazine. You see him on this show quarterly for visits throughout this year of 2023 as we talk about things going on in Texas and in the barbecue world in general. We race to the hotline and welcome back our pal, Daniel Vaughn. Daniel, I had Jeremy Umansky on in the first hour, and we were both lauding you for bringing me to Larder, and I'm shamed to say it, but I'm not too proud not to say it, when we were enjoying a barbecue meal a number of years ago, and you said, oh, hey, you ever been to this place over on the west side? And I said, no. And you're like, let's get in the cab right now. We got to go right now. And that was the best place to go that day, right?
Yeah, no, the place is incredible. I love that place. And, you know, I think it was not long after that he had a couple of, a couple of real stars there. Mm-hmm. With Daniel Ballou and Thomas Keller coming in, singing his praises as well. So we were ahead of that curve.
Thank goodness, and that's why we are in the positions that we are. You're probably talented. I was just lucky to be riding your coattails that day, but I'll take credit wherever I can get it. So we have some topics to talk about this evening here, Daniel, and a couple weeks ago, I find myself in Houston for reasons I shall not disclose. But I finally had some real-ass Texas barbecue. And lo and behold, it's the number 3 on the top 50 list for Texas Monthly, Truth Barbecue. What do you like best about Truth?
Okay, so did you know that going in that you were eating at the number 3 place, or you found that out afterwards?
So it's both. I knew because we had talked about the list and we had won over the top 10. Also, after the fact, I had Leonard Botello on the show. I think we talked, was he at one time on the list twice for 2 different locations, or he had made it on the list in successive releases or something along these lines?
We certainly, we enjoy both locations at Texas Monthly. So you were at the Houston location, which is their newer one, the big grand palace of Truth Barbecue. Yeah. What do I love about it? Oh man. Well, the one thing that you can't leave there without is a slice of that giant cake. Chocolate cake, and there's a coconut cake,
red velvet.
Red velvet. Yeah. They do them all well. But the burnt end, the brisket boudin there. Oh my God, it's so good. And then, it's not really something you can order on its own, but if you get a turkey sandwich and then you put some of the cream spinach on there, man, that's quite a combination. But the last time I was in, I had the 4th slice of brisket, which, as you well know, is the best slice.
Daniel, look at you trying to start up a mockery of social media, having people go out. Here's what I love about Texas. You put this out about 4th slice of brisket. You showed video of wherever you were at, the guys cutting in and showing the 4th slice of brisket. It was truth. Okay. And I'm like, wow. This guy is starting nonsense on purpose. But I mentioned it on the show a couple days later. It just happened. Maybe you posted over the weekend, and Tuesday was coming quickly, so I mentioned it. How many people from Texas are emailing me and messaging me, dude, you have a barbecue show and you don't know about the fourth slice of brisket? This is old talk. We've done this forever, blah, blah, blah. Everybody was taking credit for it, hand over fist, and I'm talking to you about it, and you're like, well, I don't know. It was like, to my knowledge, I was the first one putting it out there.
Well, that's the thing about the barbecue community, right? It's like 3 people have talked about it, so all of a sudden it's old news to them, and then everyone in the world knows it, right? And that's the thing with the fourth slice. That's why I wrote the article, because it's fun. Because it was like this inside joke between several people, and to a certain degree they have a point that it is a good way to sort of measure how good your brisket is, because you can compare the same slice like side by side by side, right? So you aren't cherry picking your slice out of the brisket. You're selecting that specific one. So as far as comparing one brisket to the next, I think it works well. But the idea that or the fact that I got, had to be over 100 Instagram photos like within 2 days after publishing that, and I shared most of them, but of people sharing their fourth slice. Some people sharing it, with a level of confidence that maybe didn't show in their brisket.
Here's the heartache that you're causing restaurateurs. Here's Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue. He's in Joe, forgive me, is it El Paso, Texas? He's got a food trailer. It's going like gangbusters. And he says, I had a guy come and ask for the fourth slice of brisket. And I'm like, what the F? Of course you are, Joe. It's nonsense. I mean, could somebody charge $20 for the fourth slice of brisket? I mean, if you have some bag coming in and asking for the fourth slice, if you're going to take out that whole brisket and cut into that fourth slice on the fatty end, could you charge $20 for that slice?
Well, the way that Leonard Botello, the way he described that problem, which really isn't a problem, is that if you want the fourth slice and he's not ready to cut the fourth slice, then you just buy 1, 2, and 3 as well, and hey, that's about a pound of brisket. So, if you want the fourth slice out of a fresh brisket, then you're probably going to be buying a pound of brisket.
Yeah.
But there was a guy in Chicago at Green Street Smoked Meats, and he said that he did have a customer who came in and asked for, I think, 3 fourth slices, and he's like, no, no, that's not happening.
Well, I have to say, through the Truth experience, the fatty brisket was easily some of the best I've ever had. The lean brisket, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and say lean brisket was average, but however, it's lean brisket, right? So I don't know if even the best lean brisket is life-changing. Maybe average is as good as it gets. But when you're comparing the point to the flat, it was so night and day. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I love a slice of lean brisket with a nice fat cap on top. I'd say about the 5th slice of that is the best, but
we'll leave that here.
No, but really, like a lean slice of brisket with a nice fat cap on top. I do enjoy that slice. That when they cut the brisket in half and you get the fatty here and the lean here, usually that first slice of lean that still has a little of the fatty on top, that's what I get pretty often when I ask for lean brisket. That slice of lean is not my favorite. Like I want it a little closer to the I want it a little closer to the end, where I'm getting that nice, 1/8 inch, quarter inch thick line of fat cap.
Turkey, 10 out of 10. It was the best turkey I've had. We've had good turkey barbecue-wise here in Cleveland. You can actually second that emotion. But this turkey was out of the effing park. My wife was like, oh, my God, this is life-changing turkey. We bought another pound to take home to the hotel just so we could eat it in cold. It was amazing. Even better the next day because the smoke had another 16 hours on it just to mill around and mix into that turkey meat. But holy crap, it was incredible. The only, if I have an issue, and we're picking the nittiest of nits here, I also got ribs. I think mine were like a little chewy, and from what I was told, Texas is more of a fall off the bone type of area. I don't know if you can confirm or deny that, but I was hoping for
Well,
at least bite into it and then have everything come off clean. It was a little pulley.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wouldn't say that's Texas style. I will say that y- I'm looking for the same thing that a competition judge is looking for in a rib,
Yeah.
as you described. Like you bite down, it comes cleanly away from the bone, but it's nothing is like sliding off the bone, right? But I will say that when you're a barbecue joint like Truth and you're cooking full spares, you do have much more variation from edge to middle as far as doneness, right? Those edge ribs are much thinner, much smaller, and they're going to get done faster than the middle rib. And so that big, thick middle ones can sometimes be a little under, as opposed to like a rack of baby backs where most of those ribs are the same size from one end of the rack to the other.
So here's the other part of real ass Texas barbecue that I got to experience. I waited in a line. This was, let's say, an hour and a half. I got there like at 12:30, maybe 1 o'clock or something. So, I mean,
wow,
my
okay.
fault, right? Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But hour and a half, which further cements the fact I would never, ever, ever wait in Franklin's barbecue line for, 2, 3, 4, 6 hours or line up overnight or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it unreasonable? I know the answer is yes. Is it unreasonable to think that it might be more efficient in this place at Truth, especially this place, the Shangri-La? You would have 2 or 3 or 4 cutting stations, and at open, maybe they're fully staffed, and as you wane through the hours of operation, maybe you close down 1 or 2 and transition those people into the back, or, I don't know, clean up the dining room or whatever, just to move the line through a little bit, or is that just the process to give attention?
I mean, I do think that they normally have 2 cutters going at Truth, but I'm more of the opinion of like the barbecue joint that's selling out every day that they're open. They probably don't need much business advice from me.
But efficiency, right? I mean, nobody wants to wait in lines, or you just got to, like, people in Texas realize that, and I'm a outsider and I'm just not used to it?
Well, I mean, did you go on a Saturday as well?
No.
Or just in the weekday?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was, I think it was
I'm
a
sorry.
Thursday
That sucks
or a
for
Friday.
you. That's definitely on the high end of the length that I've spent. The length that I've spent in line at Truth Barbecue.
I'm not complaining. It was a great experience.
I think you were
but
on the high
again,
end there for sure.
All right. Well,
but yeah, I think every time I've been there, at least recently, there have been at least 2 cutting stations, and then they have a side station as well. So, I think they move you along pretty quickly, but yeah, I'm sorry about that hour and a half.
Well, I mean, it's not your restaurant. And again, I'm not complaining. I'm just giving my experience. And
I meant for giving them number 3 and just showing the power of Texas Monthly.
That's right. Now, outside of Texas barbecue, I mean, we could talk about Texas barbecue until the cows come home. Of course, that's what you do best. You were recently abroad. Is there a notable barbecue scene wherever you were taking vacation? And if so, what did you think about it?
Oh wow. Yeah, we were in Athens. We went to Greece as a family for spring break. And wherever I'm traveling, I'm gonna seek out a Texas style or American style barbecue place, right? And chances are, if it's a major city around the world, it's going to have at least one.
Really?
And there was, it's almost without fail.
Wow.
And Fine Mess Smokehouse was the place that I found in Athens. I mean, they have these barbecue signs all over it that are talking about the very high-minded pursuit of barbecue. And I mean, they're taking it very seriously. Like in the dining room, you're looking through a glass window into the pit room, and it's it's all right there within this building.
Real pits?
It's not. Yeah, real offset, steel offset smoker. Yeah, it was legit. It was a legit operation going on there. The way that all that translated into the food that we got on our plate was, it was barbecue in Greece. I wasn't thinking that I was going to get some of the best I've ever had.
When you're comparing barbecue, so you're in Greece, you're getting barbecue. Are you inherently evaluating it against what would be a good Texas or Central Texas barbecue restaurant, or are you just trying to base it on barbecue merits in general?
Barbecue merits in general. Yeah, I mean, for me, the barbecue merits tend to be generally universal, no matter what style you're eating, right? You want it to be tender and juicy and flavorful. And if you don't have those things, then something's gone wrong along the way, right? And so I think that's the same case whether you're in North Carolina or Memphis or Kansas City or Greece or Sweden or wherever you might be eating barbecue.
What'd you think about Greece? I hear it's quite the mix of, let's say, history and technology.
Well, we focus much more on the history side of it. So, as a former architect, I had a lot of places on my list of sites that I wanted to see. Of course, we started in Athens and got to see the Acropolis and see the Parthenon.
Was
did
Yanni
that right off
playing?
the bat. No, didn't see him. No,
Curse.
yeah.
He's my favorite.
But we took a tour through quite a bit of the country, but mainly just to classical sites. So we didn't see much of the technology side of it. It was mostly just lots of old rocks, as my daughter said.
What do people think about you Americans? Are they pretty friendly to you, or they give you a little stink eye?
Oh man, it was full of Texans, man. We had it was spring break for both Dallas schools and Houston schools.
So they go to Greece?
And yeah.
I thought they go to Corpus Christi for MTV.
Well, yeah, okay. But the
Hi, showing my 1992 roots, right?
Yeah,
Hello.
that's for sure. Yes, yeah. But there were a lot of Texans like on the tour that we were on. There was I mean, on our last night in Greece, we stopped at this little, a gyro shop to eat dinner before we, went to bed, and we were headed out the next morning. And of course, like it's the ball cap, right? You see the ball cap and it's an American. Like that's really
nobody
all there
wears
is
ball
to it.
caps otherwise. The
No.
Greeks,
No, not really. No,
because they all
not the
have
Greeks, for
like
sure.
really dense, curly black hair that everybody wishes they
Yes.
had. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Why
I
stick it
did
under a
get
cap?
I was on one of the islands on Hydra, and it was rather warm, and I did buy myself a Greek shirt, which is it's a deep V-neck. I mean, we're talking like chest hair Friday, big time.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So not many ball caps unless they're Americans, but yeah. So we see this family, and it's like, oh wow, are you on the flight to DFW Airport tomorrow morning? Oh yeah, we are. Yeah. So we saw them all along the way as well.
Huh.
So yeah, we saw lots of Texans. I mean, there was even another tour group who was eating a snack with us at when we were at Olympia, where the first Olympics were held.
Yep.
And somebody was asking me about where to go eat barbecue in in San Antonio, and I was telling them. And somebody asked about Houston. This other group's like, Fort Worth's got the best, and I was like, yeah, I've heard that.
They know who you are.
So I don't think they did, which made it even funnier. But they were saying that because of Goldie's.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I enjoyed that part. Yes.
Outside of the barbecue attempt, what was the best food you ate at Greece?
Wow. Well, there was this one night where we kind of snuck off away from the tour group and the bad buffet in the hotel. Yeah, well, it was bad buffet in the hotel. We'd had enough of that. And so we went down the street to this place in Delphi, and they had it was just a local restaurant making local food. They had these this homemade noodles, which was basically egg noodles, and roasted lamb, and they made their own vermouth, and they made their own liqueurs, and yeah, so we had a grand time. That was probably my favorite meal right there.
Daniel Vaughn is writing for Texas Monthly. He's the first ever full-time barbecue editor in this country, and he's currently still the best. TMBBQ.com is the website, and the tweeter is at BBQ Snob. If you would like to get at him and ask questions or give him your comments on where the barbecue scene is, he's there for any and all of it. Daniel, always appreciate the time, and we will see you again in 3 months.
All right. Great talking with you.
You got it. It's Daniel Vaughn. Fresh from Greece. He's daring. I think he got stuck in Peru, I think. Was it Peru? Costa Rica? One of those places. He was stuck in the pandemic, like couldn't get back. He's a traveler, that guy. Travels all across Texas, which is bigger than most countries that he's gone to. And then he's traveling outside of the United States as well. Far more adventures than me. And good for him. I'd rather live through him vicariously than actually travel. TMBBQ.com is website, and we're back to wrap the whole show right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Whole packers, full racks, legs and thighs, injecting butts. If you've never heard this before, you might think you found the best XXX show ever. Let's get back to the most homoerotic host out there today, Craig Rimpey.
And we thank Daniel Vaughn for joining us last segment. TMBBQ.com is his website. The Barbecue Show is saying, I can't even get into the U.S. Well, no shit, Jason. You hate every cooker ever made. The United States listens. This guy hates too many cookers. He can't come into the United States. He can't do it. As soon as he relaxes on some of the hate, we'll let him back into the greatest country ever. But until then, you got to stay up north. Go perfect your booze teen. Make more booze teen, Jason. Give it to the guards as you cross the border. Give it to the border guards. Maybe they'll let you in with a little booze teen. All right, let's go ahead and get on out. We're a little late. All the way back in the first hour in segment 1 and 2 and a little into the second hour was Jeremy Umansky. He is a Koji expert, the Koji expert. Koji Alchemy is his book that he co-wrote. You can find that wherever books are sold. By the way, I meant to give this away 7 times over the course of the last 2 hours. It's Kent and Shannon Rollins' Comfort Food the Cowboy Way. If you would like this book, email me right now, and in the subject line, put Canada. Hurry! First one in will win it. I'll get back to you, and you will give me a shipping address. That's Greg at thebbqcentralshow.com if you want to win Kent Rollins' new book. Subject line, Canada. Do it right now. If you're listening to this on podcast, don't send me an email. Don't! The contest is already over. There's been a winner. Trust me on this. Don't send me the email. Don't send me the email. Don't send me the email. They say in advertising you got to say it at least 3 times for people to hear it. So if you're listening on podcast, don't send me the email. There we go. So is Jeremy Umansky, second hour, West Wright from cookoutnews.com, and then closing out the show, Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly. The 4th Tuesday of the month comes up next week. Derek Riches will be in. The Embedded Correspondents will be in, amongst others. So please be sure to tune in. Don't forget to get the Best Moments show this coming Friday to hear the first ever show I ever did, ever. And then don't email me telling me how bad it sucks, because, again, I lived it. I know it. So that's what's happening. Oh, and over the course of this week and next week, I'll be releasing all the interviews I got at the HPB Expo in Louisville that I was there a week and a half ago. Those are all audited. Those are all audited and edited. They were given back to the people that gave me the interviews. They've agreed that everything's good, and I will now begin to release those. To look for a bunch of bonus content, about 6 or 7 bonus content episodes coming out here over the course of the next week or so. Broil King, Dansons, Pro Q, Bull, Barbecue. Those are the ones I'm remembering right off the top of my head. Blackstone. That was a great interview. Can't wait to release that one. That'll be the first release. Blackstone. So look forward to that. All right. Again, big show planned for you Tuesday. How do I always leave? September 11th, 2001. I will never forget. Until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. This is your program host and proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Bye-bye.
Hey, what's up? This is JM, host of the Celebrity Grill podcast on iTunes, and you're listening to the Barbecue Central Radio Network. All barbecue and grilling, all the time.